Coming up on the show.
And afterwards, we wrote to him and said, look, we've put together this one-page marketing plan. It's modelled on Vern's one-pager, but we've utilised the ideas from your book and your teachings that we absolutely loved, and it's mirroring what we're seeing in the marketplace too. And he said, "Oh wow, boys, that's fabulous. I love that. Maybe we could change a couple of things, and I'd love to include it in my next edition of my book." And of course, when people do go to search for it, they find our website. They can download it off our website, and it's grown our email list and our audience significantly, which has been a huge game changer compared to knocking on doors and getting rejected.
Yeah,
having tens of thousands of people that you can communicate with, with the click of a button, just off the back of actually producing and sharing something that's genuinely valuable that people want. That's been the biggest game changer.
Have you ever had a great idea but felt unsure how to turn it into something real? Maybe you started a business, but marketing feels like a puzzle with just too many pieces. Today's guest, Adam Franklin, knows exactly what that is like. Before becoming a marketing strategist, speaker, and author of Web Marketing That Works, Adam was just a university student with a competitive spirit and a knack for strategy. Fast forward, and he has co-founded Bluewire Media, built one of Australia's most recognised business blogs, and now teaches entrepreneurs how to turn their marketing into a powerful asset. In this episode, we'll explore how Adam's upbringing and athletic mindset shaped his approach to business, how he took Bluewire Media from an idea to an industry leader, and what today's business owners need to know about marketing in a changing world. If you've ever struggled with how to grow your business without wasting time and money on marketing that doesn't work, this one's for you. All right, let's dive in. Adam Franklin, thank you so much for coming on the show.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Now, tell me about your early life. What shaped you? What caused? Anything specific that you can remember that you think was pivotal to be the person that you are today?
Look, to be honest, I think I had a fairly normal, normal upbringing. I was very lucky. Things were great. There's no trauma. There's no bad memories. There's nothing I would change. It was like a really perfect upbringing. Sure, things, could have been different, of course, but for the most part, really loved it. Had a great circle of friends, a lot of stability, and got the opportunity to try things, to travel, to do all of those types of things. And I think that's just something that I'm forever grateful for.
That stability.
Yeah.
And you studied commerce and science at UQ.
Yep.
And also a competitive athlete?
Somewhat competitive, not to your level.
Tell me what did that experience in sport, how has that helped you in business or in work going forward?
Look, for me, playing water polo was the sport that I was most proficient at. And I'm talking sort of only schoolboy level, not as a senior representative or anything like that. But what it did in the early days is it gave me a really strong sense of identity. There was something I could finally go, oh, I'm a water polo player.
Yeah, right.
And that had a big positive impact on me as a person, I feel. And at the same time, what it taught me when my ability didn't match my ambitions and I got dropped, as sort of a 16-year-old, I didn't make the state sort of intensive training squad, I think it was called at the time. And that rejection of being cut was very painful because that was my identity. I was this water polo player. And all of a sudden now I wasn't on that pathway to the seniors or the Olympics or whatever else. And that was difficult. But what it taught me was that, yes, there's life outside of sport for sure, but learning how to cope with that disappointment, I think, was a valuable experience. And accepting that your goals don't always come true. You've given it your best shot, didn't get as far as I had hoped, but that's okay because it doesn't diminish my worth as a person. I was still, a happy, confident kid, but I just was never going to be an Australian water polo player, and that's a good lesson to learn.
Did you have people around you to help you through that, or are you? I
guess I did, but I didn't really talk to them. It wasn't, it was just sort of like, oh man, that hurts. All the other kids, all the other boys that are going off to
progressing
national titles that are in the training squad, and now what do? I don't have 5:30 trainings every morning of the week, so I guess I just do homework or something.
Now, as an entrepreneur and you having your own business, I sort of find in the people that I interview that you have that spirit is develops pretty early on in your life. Is that the same for you?
Look, 100%. Look, I always had ambitions of running my own business because when I was a teenager, I'd always fortunately had people in my world that I go, oh wow, how did they get to do this type of thing? And it always came back to them having a business, like either whether it was freedom or it was wealth or it was something else that I aspired to. When I got to meet them or learn about them, it was, oh, he started a business here or she started this business there. So I thought there is a pathway to do that when traditionally my education and my family all pointed towards medicine.
Okay.
But fortunately, my dad talked me out of that career. And I'm glad that he did, because going down this entrepreneurial path has been just, such a great adventure. But also you mentioned before that I studied science and commerce. It was interesting. Like I'm a biochemist by trade, but I've never gone down that sort of professional path and just did a complete.
It's almost like you hedged. You hedged at uni just in case.
I was good at science. I was good at science at school, but then I wasn't good at it at uni, whether that was not applying myself or it was just out of my depth. But I realized then I could either do something that I'm okay at but don't love, or I could go down this path that's an adventure, it's uncertain, but I'm wholeheartedly enthusiastic about going on that journey of becoming an entrepreneur, which I'm so glad I did.
Did you have jobs growing through school?
Jobs? Yeah, I did. From the younger stage, mowed a few people's lawns in the neighbourhood.
Well, there you go. There's your first startup.
Yeah, that's my first startup, and then I did have retail jobs. So there was a school fashion parade with the girls' school next door, and one of the clothing suppliers, Mitchell Ogilvy Menswear, provided the suits, and I thought, this is great. And then I went and hit up Mitch for a job, and got a job selling menswear on in the city on a Friday night and Saturday morning. So that was cool. So,
I had a fish and chip job. It wasn't selling men's suits, but my goodness, that's cool.
Yeah, all sorts of random jobs before starting my own business, but I've never had a proper job.
Is the impact of marketing and the result of the result of marketing into becoming having a successful business? When did that play a part? Where did that start coming in? Was it uni when you did Marketing 101, or are you getting an interest in this before?
Certainly it was university days, probably not the curriculum. It was more I was doing nightclub promotions at the time.
Oh, here we go.
There's
some more jobs.
This is the part that lit me up. It was not working as a bartender or a glassy. I mean, I had done those jobs as well, but this was an opportunity to host a night at a nightclub.
You're managing a night, yeah.
Yeah, and then so you could invite your people in. You could charge a cover charge or not, or whatever.
Interesting.
Put people on a VIP list and let them
like
in.
a micro environment of a business, but for one night.
Correct. One night, 6 hours, whatever it was. And so we had this freedom and flexibility and opportunity, and we got to promote it, and we got to keep $1 of every cover charge that was paid. So if we let all our mates in for free, we wouldn't get any money for that. But by the same token, it might be a busy night and then it becomes popular. So it was this trade-off that we got the control over. And so if we went out to the university O-Weeks or promoted the event or whatever, there was a direct upside to that, which was cool. And so we loved that. So we ended up doing Thursday nights and Saturday nights at various nightclubs around Brizzy.
Yeah.
And that was, I guess, probably my first real entrepreneurial.
Yeah, it sounds like it. And such a short feedback loop too, right? So you go, this is what we're doing this week. And then you're like immediately getting a response going, well, that didn't work.
Yeah.
Or that absolutely crushed. And let's keep doing that component. Were you doing inadvertently doing A/B testing in that sense?
I guess we were, yeah. We definitely were. There was different themed nights. We might run 4 themed nights for a month and then shift gears to something else. Or sometimes, there was a big difference in our paycheck, like if there was an empty nightclub versus full nightclub with 500 people in it. So for a uni student, $500 for half a night's sort of work when you're not really working. All you're doing is having free drinks and entertaining your mates. So it was a dream come true. I was getting paid for doing something. I'd be at that nightclub anyway with my mates. And I thought, I'm really smart. I've worked out a way to get paid a few $100, drink for free, and sort of, be popular and shout my mates' drinks and whatever else. So it was like a really fun situation for me.
That's awesome. That is so good. And so that marketing of that, you're implementing strategies on the marketing level for that?
Yeah.
Talk to me through.
So back then it was pretty early days, like we're talking 2000s here. So it was really only email and and flyers. and text messaging your mates. So
Just
like
people having mobile phones was probably just.
It was only just
kicking off
mobile
then.
phones, yeah, and it was pretty slow
Nokia
texting.
3210s.
That's it.
Yeah,
That's
I
it.
got that.
So we would go to Indooroopilly Shopping Centre, would go to Carindale and hand out flyers to some of the shops that sort of serve,
your
nightclub
clientele.
age people.
Yeah.
Would also go out to the universities and, hand stuff out. And email marketing, I guess, was very, very crude, but I would get all of my mates that I knew and I'd, email them out the flyer or whatever we decided to use as promotion that week and flick it out to them and say, hey, let me know if you want to come. I'll put your name on the list. And so, yeah, that was the part that I enjoyed too, thinking about who we could invite to these events and how we might market it.
And how they influence their circle.
Correct.
To bring in. Oh, that's awesome.
And so even like the Saturday night part of it, where there was 18th, so you'd always know whose 18th was coming up, so you could try and coordinate for a bus or two to bring everybody back to your nightclub.
Yeah.
So it was fun, really.
Wow.
Fun. Yeah.
Wheeling and dealing.
I guess so.
Through uni.
Yeah, through uni days, yeah.
Love it. Building Bluewire Media, which isn't specializing in nightclub promotion. Talk to me about how you started this idea and then the progression, I guess, to become almost an industry leader in media.
Sure. Yes, I mean, it's been a 20-year journey, but at the start, as I said, I always wanted to run a business. I didn't really know what or care what. I just wanted to be a business owner. And so we actually looked at a couple of different options. I'm talking me and a handful of mates.
Are these the same mates that did the nightclub stuff?
Different.
Okay.
Yeah, different mates. One of the ideas that, because I'm non-technical and didn't really love computers or internet or anything like that back in the day, but he said, look, there's these websites which we'd all, heard of, and we'd programmed a couple in university. Very, very crude websites, but crude from a development standpoint, not the content on them. But he said, all these businesses, they probably need them. Lots don't have them. We can do these. We can get these website templates, and then we can edit them and customize them for each of these businesses. So I said, oh yeah, that makes sense. So we, knocked on doors, literally in the summer heat in Brisbane in 2005, asking if the business owner was there, and hey, do you want a website? And they'd say, no, thank you. And so we got rejected, time after time after time for, days on end.
Wow.
Yeah. But eventually we thought, well, that's not working so well.
Yeah.
But there was a magazine called the Brisbane News, which people had to pay money to advertise in.
Mm.
And so we went through the magazine and looked for businesses that advertised but didn't have a website listed on there.
Perfect.
They must have enough money
some
to
money
pay.
to
Yeah.
Yep.
And so we cut them all out and then got a bit of a list together, got their numbers and cold called them. And we said, look, we've seen your advert in the Brisbane News. Looks really great. I noticed you didn't have a website link. Is it something you'd like to talk about if we come and show you what, is possible?
Mm.
And so that opened the door when we were suddenly coming from a place of generosity, saying we can show you what it could look like, or we could talk to you about what that could do. We were able to start booking meetings then, and that sort of led to our first handful of clients.
And you co-founded that company with Toby?
With Toby Jenkins. Yep. Another fella, Tom Ferrier, at the start as well.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
What was the dynamic like going into business with someone else or with two?
It was awesome. I mean, so many people had said don't go into business with a friend.
Mm.
But we were sort of thinking, well, who else would you want to go into business with? Like, you trust them, you know each other's strengths. You've got a really strong relationship foundation there. So it seemed bizarre to go into business with a stranger versus someone that you know, like, and trust already.
Yeah.
And so what we did from the early days, and we sought out mentors, because obviously we didn't know much. We knew that a lot of people had a much greater knowledge of business than we did. So we did ask and approach a bunch of mentors. And one of the things they said was, if you're going to go into business with friends, just make sure you've got a divorce agreement in place. And he said, you've got to cover the 4 Ds: death, departure, disagreement, and disability. And basically, in the event of any of these scenarios, particularly disagreement, what is the process you go through? So instead of burning a friendship over a disagreement about the color of a logo or something, we had a process to say, well, if there's a disagreement, we escalate it to a mentor. And here's 3 of the mentors that we would be comfortable approaching. And we either live with their decision. Okay, so we knew that if there was a situation, that was the process. So it took away that sort of fear of stuff going bad.
Of risking the friendship.
Of risking the friendship, yeah. And that's seen us through 20 years. I mean, Toby, I'm running the business now on my own. Toby's gone on to do different types of businesses, and so has Tom, all amicably, which is a miracle according to most people. But that advice has seen us through so many difficult situations that it was
We'll go into that. What's early days? Is there any challenge? Like, what's the biggest hurdle? You calling these companies and they're like, yeah, let's have a meeting and it's happy days. But is there a scalability piece here that you struggle with, or is it what was the hurdle that you can recall early?
Oh, look, plenty of hurdles. Probably the ones that come to mind most is the cash flow hurdles make you sort of a bit tight in the chest at the time. Not really fully understanding the importance of good financial management in terms of having enough money set aside for different tax bills that come in. So I got caught short a few times of going, oh, there's this huge tax bill. We should have known, but we didn't. It's on us, but where do we find this money? Those were the challenging ones, because we often, like, we traded through them, we got through, so we're really proud of that. But it was very white knuckle stuff for a while, thinking, oh, do we close up shop and disappoint all these clients that have paid money that we wouldn't be able to deliver on, or do we, so in the end we decided we would honor all of that. We would just keep sell and get more money in and get through it. But that's pretty scary stuff. And also realizing then that at the time we had about, a dozen or so employees who, depend on us for their paycheck and everything else too. So there was that sense of disappointing the clients and the staff, and it was just a stressful situation. But you get through and you learn, and
what was the goal? Like, you grow, you guys as the three, and then the two, you say, oh, this demand for our service and what the brand that we do is obviously hitting a chord, and this influx of work that we can't do ourselves, so we got to scale, and you got to then find the right people to bring into the house to employ. And you had 12 employees up to that. Like, are you having conversations as to where this is going, or is it as simple as we're just going to be trying to match the demand?
I mean, a lot of the demand was generated ourselves. Like, it wasn't as if people were knocking on our door and there was a queue out, metaphorical queue out the door. We were selling, and also the challenge with selling was knowing the right projects to take on the right clients. It was difficult because sometimes, through no fault of your own, a client might have committed to, do a project for a month, and then they all of a sudden have to pull out for whatever reason. You've still got to pay your staff, but they haven't committed to it. So there's challenges there. But the goal in those early days, we did always have visions of 20-year BHAGs, if you like, and visions for the company. We didn't always necessarily, and I don't think the objective of a BHAG is to know exactly how you're going to get there.
Yeah.
But we did have big picture visions for sure. But we also had always said we're not so attached to the business model or the company itself. This is just a vehicle to get there. So if something better comes along,
sure,
happy to change. And in fact, the business has iterated heaps since the early days of selling websites to being more of a consulting company. And then we wrote our book and did speaking and workshops for a decade or so. And now it's moved more just to coaching and implementation through a home studio sort of setup, which has mirrored the evolution in my life. But having lots of staff had its challenges.
What's been the biggest change over the last 20 years in the industry, do you think?
Oh, definitely social media and AI. That's two.
Sure. Yeah.
But the ability, when we started, there was no Facebook, there was no LinkedIn, there was no Twitter, or certainly not, mainstream. That really opened up the ability for everyday people to be connected online. And then obviously in more recent times, the introduction of AI has just changed the game completely, and I think will change everything faster than we ever could have predicted. I mean, I think has already, but will continue to change business.
So less need for pamphlets for your nightclub promoters these days, you think?
I think so. But I mean, I think it places the value more on the personal connection. Like, you can only get personal connection in certain places, like in a nightclub or a bar or a cafe.
Yeah.
But the lion's share of our life is interacting with a digital either picture of someone on a newsfeed scroll or on a YouTube video or on a FaceTime or a Zoom, we don't actually, can't actually reach out and shake the hand of people.
You developed one of Australia's #1 business blogs as well. What was behind that success, do you think?
Yeah, so one of our early mentors, Vern Harnish, who wrote the book.
Vern was one of your mentors.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Not like a one-on. We didn't.
No.
But yes,
Wow.
Yeah, so we went along to his events, and we actually tried to emulate the way we got into Vern's world. We tried to emulate with our own marketing, and I'll come back to that in a sec. But
with the Rockefeller habits.
Yeah, with the Rockefeller habits and the one-page strategic plan.
Yep.
So our web strategy planning template, we modeled that on his one-page strategic plan. But via an early mentor, Vern, he'd always said you need to own the ink. And by that, he meant by publishing books, publishing articles, and being the thought leader.
Yeah.
And so part of the early days was publishing stuff to our blog and, in our case, releasing marketing templates that we could release and share with the world so that they could be used, and there was always a pathway back to us. And so that was such a revelation in our marketing journey. Because back then, a lot of people said if they released a white paper, let's say this is copyright us, no one share it.
Real
hoarding, protecting.
Yeah, a real scarcity mindset, right?
Massively scarcity.
And there's, for you at that early stage and every other really successful online producer of content will always say, give out as much as you can.
100%.
Keep giving for free.
Keep giving for free. Yeah, exactly.
So it's for you to adopt that early.
It was a nice sort of heads up from Vern.
Yeah.
And so we did. And, there was another marketing thought leader called David Meerman Scott, who we got to see his presentation at one of Vern's conferences. But David was sort of beaming in via satellite from America. We just loved his material. We read his book and we interviewed him for we didn't even have a podcast back then, but we just interviewed him on Zoom and hit record and stuck it on our YouTube channel.
Perfect.
And afterwards, we wrote to him and said, look, we've put together this one-page marketing plan. It's modeled on Vern's one-pager, but we've utilized the ideas from your book and your teachings that we absolutely loved, and it's mirroring what we're seeing in the marketplace too. And he said, oh, wow, boys, that's fabulous. I love that. Maybe we could change a couple of things, and I'd love to include it in my next edition of my book. I'll talk about it at my own conferences. He speaks on Tony Robbins' stages as well. So for the last 10 or 15 years, he's included it in his book. He's shared it with his own audiences. So that has really sort of opened the door for us and put us on the map.
Yeah.
And of course, when people do go to search for it, they find our website. They can download it off our website, and it's grown our email list and our audience significantly, which has been a huge game changer compared to knocking on doors and getting rejected.
Yeah.
Having tens of thousands of people that you can communicate with, with the click of a button, just off the back of actually producing and sharing something that's genuinely valuable that people want. That's been the biggest game changer for us.
Do you think with the landscape now, where there's so much noise and so many platforms, we can list everything, all the social medias, YouTubes, podcasts, I'm not helping here. Where does email, as you said, like you've got an email list, you've got the ability to, you can contact me directly. Is there still value in that?
Email's still the king.
You reckon?
100%.
Yeah.
Yep. You own the list, you're not at the mercy of the algorithms. I'd rather have 1,000 people on an email list than 10,000 people on Instagram or Facebook or anything else. Like, to me anyway, email, 100%.
No.
People buy from email. It's powerful. Like, even if you do have an Instagram following or a YouTube following, but they're all trying to get people onto their email list.
For a young entrepreneur starting out their own business in whatever industry, is there a risk or a pitfall that you'd be, after 2 decades, would be wanting to share to avoid? Or is it you should be experiencing it all?
The only pitfall I think is there's lots of pitfalls. There's loads. The biggest one from my worldview of experience is probably just, don't chicken out. Just give it a go.
Yeah.
Like, the world changes so much. Like, what I say in today's episode might be redundant, in 3 weeks' time. But what matters, I think, is if you want to do it, give it a crack. Believe in yourself. You're going to learn. You learn from doing, not from planning.
Yeah.
And so just get out there and give it a go. And probably what you start doing is not going to look like what you decide is actually working in 6 months or 6 years. So get in and give it a go,
Give it a go.
rather than just being a entrepreneur,
Yeah.
just thinking about it and being 20 years on going, I wish I'd started that thing when I was 20 years old.
Yeah.
You know, that regret would be too much for me. I'd much rather try something and have it fail, or try lots of things, than the regret of if only I tried.
Yeah. I think that there's a crossroad though, because people will, when they see their idols or they see their mentors or they see where they would like to be, they want, I think the harsh reality for most would be that they want the outcome, but they don't, when they're exposed to what it takes. And for you, it's the early days of getting rejected 99 out of 100 times, right? It's a lot. There's a lot of grind that isn't sexy, that isn't successful, and you have to endure it.
100%. Yeah, you got to be ready for that.
You know, and you go, and a really great case in point was I started with in a gym, right? Getting back into some sort of lifting program. And a friend of mine or someone that I knew from back in my aerobic endurance days was there. And he was like smitten that I was in this gym. And he was talking to me about high rocks, right? And I'm like, okay, I know what CrossFit is sort of, but what's the high rocks thing? And that's essentially a combination of running and gym work over a course of like an hour to an hour and 15.
Yep.
And I was like, okay, so how long do you run for? And he's like, and I could be butchering this because I have done no research since for this reason. He's like, you run a kilometer, then do an exercise, run a kilometer, do an exercise, run a kilometer, and like sled pull or burpees or whatever it is.
Yep.
This is boring all of you. I know, I'm sorry. Bear with me.
I've done this race. I love it.
Right.
Yeah,
okay.
I've done it, yeah.
So I'm thinking, okay, I know that I can run 1 kilometers at about 3:10 to 3:15 per kilometer. Right. So maybe I've got this. Maybe this sport is like my new side hustle. Not even a side hustle, but just something that I can, as a hobby, get into it. So I'm like, oh yeah, and I see him and he's ripped as shit. And I'm like, yeah, I could aim for that. Let's do it. And then I realized I did like 2 classes of preparing for it. And I'm like, this isn't for me. Like, great example of like, I want to be there. But I don't want to go through what's necessary to be able to push a sled for 50 meters. That's not me.
I think that's an important realization. Hey, like, for entrepreneurs or whatever career path you want to get into, actually speak to people that have done that, so you learn what it's really like. Because people might look at a lawyer and go, "That's a really sexy life," but you need to talk to people to see what does a day-to-day, week-to-week look like. And I did the same because I always wanted to crack into the US speaking market because I was doing a lot in the national Australian speaking circuit.
Yeah.
And I thought, there's Americans that get paid lots bigger money. It sounds really sexy and fun. So I found an Aussie who was really successful on that circuit, and I spoke to him and said, what's it taken to get to that stage? And he told me, and I thought, okay, I don't want it that bad.
Yeah.
and that was good to know.
Yes.
Because it was not something that I was at that stage of my life was ready to or able to do. So I just stayed domestic. And, it's really useful to speak to people to find out the truth of what it takes to see if you're ready.
And that's to your point about being an entrepreneur, because I think you go, oh, yeah, I'd like that and that. But I think your eyes wide open to the grind and to the bits that suck, the bits you don't see,
Yeah, they're never on Instagram.
No, I think that if you can get your head around that. And similarly with like even this show, Codes and I, we sat down and we're like, and same with the firm, how we sit down and go, how will this fail? What are the things that need to happen for this to fail? And we classify the pod as failing as not releasing one every week. And you go, okay, well then how will that fail? And then we map that out. And so you know exactly what's going to happen, what has to happen for us not to succeed here. And if you can work your way through that, then you understand what grind is necessary to continue that path to success. So similarly with your US speaking thing, it might be, you've got to be over there. You've got to knock on 99 doors to get the one yes, and it might cost, you might pay $5,000, but 40% of that, all of it goes to your agent. And then, and then you go, okay, how am I going to fail here? And that's because there's a lot of potential ways to lose this. You're not prepared.
Yeah, exactly. It meant flying at your own expense to these things, doing it for free.
Yeah.
A year of
free work. Yeah.
A year of courting the right people, multiple trips, just to then maybe get a booking and maybe do a good enough job to get booked again. And even if you do get that, you're still back and forth all the time, which is an exhausting way to live.
Still in a suitcase, yeah.
Yeah, and so you've probably done it, but I have done some overseas speaking gigs, but trying to give a keynote presentation when your body thinks it's 2 a.m, it's very, very hard to get that same energy than when you're doing it in your own time zone.
Yeah. And also, I mean, I know that it is lucrative, and it's a path to, I guess, your own brand, but it's not a going concern. It's not a business, you know.
You're still the dancing monkey.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you do all that work. There's still a huge amount of potential that it doesn't pay off, but you get it. Even if you do get it, the runway after that is pretty limited.
Yeah, totally.
Because you are the dancing monkey, as you say. Let's pivot again. Let's go some more tools for the people. How would you approach teaching them a whole idea of marketing to someone who's starting a business? What's the fundamentals?
Oh, okay. So my sort of answer to that, honest answer,
because you have a book as well, and you've been featured in Forbes, Huffington Post, The Entrepreneurial. You're the thought leader in my mind to Vern's position. You own the ink here. What do we do?
Look, at this day and age, I would honestly go to ChatGPT.
Oh my God, how is that advice?
Well, because
forget your book, Adam. Don't worry about buying it on Amazon.
It is a good
number
book.
Number one on Amazon, but just head to ChatGPT. And
my book is called Web Marketing That Works, but I would almost go into ChatGPT. If you did like my marketing philosophy, which is be generous and provide tools and, you know, invite people into your world and then provide a path for them to achieve whatever aspiration or goal they have, you can even go to ChatGPT and say, you are Adam Franklin, the author of Web Marketing That Works. I want you to be my marketing coach. Now, what would you recommend to a business owner starting out who's 18 years old and, you know, does this, that, and the other? And so, you know, my advice, if I was giving it, would be generalized if I was saying it to you. But if you do go to ChatGPT, it can tailor it for your exact situation. And that's the nature of the beast now. Like ChatGPT or any of the other AI platforms can draw on all of the key marketing thought leaders, whether it's Seth Godin or Gary Vaynerchuk or whoever you enjoy following, and actually apply those ideas, marry it up to your personal situation. You might be selling lollipops at a school fair, or you might be selling legal contracts to a business owner. My style of marketing that I practice at Bluewire is very specific to business owners in professional services, so it's not obviously applicable to everybody. But honestly, yeah, that's the power of AI at the moment is phenomenal. And I use it all the time with my own personal life, with my business, with everything, just because that's the nature of the world that we live in. So that's my answer for you there, Richard.
Okay. And what, without giving me the same answer, what's the biggest misconception the business are doing, let's say in prof services, about marketing?
That you've got to annoy people.
That's the misconception.
The misconception is that marketing is this firstly thing that people do that aren't good enough to have. A lot of people pride themselves on, I don't need to do marketing because it's seen as either beneath them or I'm so good that my calendar's full already because I'm so good at what I do. And I guess that bothers me because if they were to do if they are that good and they did proper marketing and were generous and put out resources and tools, they could grow and scale and have an infinitely bigger impact and revenue than just sort of being at their capacity now. So they're leaving a lot of value and impact on the table by not marketing. But the other thing too is that most people approach marketing from, oh, why would people want to hear from me? They must know, or they must already know an accountant or a lawyer or a t-shirt supplier or what have you. So they feel as though they're interrupting or annoying people, when in fact, if you come to marketing from a place of, I do have genuine value that can help the right people, and I'm making that available, and it's my moral obligation to provide that and offer it to people. It's up to them if they
Sure.
take it or not, but there's so much impact you can have through marketing. It should never be a case of I feel like I'm interrupting or annoying people. It's just there's so much to give. There's so much generosity. So I would view it from a lens of how can I help people more.
I think that's also bodes in the same principles as networking generally. Because like if you if you network and you bond with someone, if you genuinely want them to win in business, and it's like, well, how can I help that? How can I be part of you winning in business? Then the connection occurs, then the work ensues, and that's really strong networking. Whereas if you go, well, I'm going to have a coffee with you because I could probably get some work from you, it's less genuine.
Definitely, yeah. When you're looking to serve other people as opposed to yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, the benefit of marketing, this is probably the answer you were looking for before when I said just go to ChatGPT. What we're really trying to do as a business owner who does marketing is there's only so many hours in a day. And so whatever you got into business for, whether it's to help people or sell stuff or whatever, there's a reason you got into it. But there's all this other stuff that needs to happen too that isn't in your genius zone. You might be okay at it or you might be terrible at it, but you end up doing a lot of that yourself. So the real objective with this marketing, certainly how I view it, is to try and replicate yourself using marketing tools and technologies. So the way I frame it to my clients is that, say there's real life Richard, who's the director of the company, but we really need to have the digital version of Richard, the virtual version of Richard, and the AI version of Richard, so that the real life version can be with his kids exercising, doing the stuff that is either high value, lucrative, enjoyable, or whatever, not doing every single thing. And so once we identify what you love doing, we can then realize that, okay, well, people need to get to know, like, and trust you before they meet with you face to face. Because if people are only just meeting you for the first time at a sort of sales meeting, consultation, whatever you want to call it, it takes time for that trust to build. But if they sat down and listened to 3 of your podcast episodes, read a couple of articles of yours, then they've spent maybe 3, 4, 5 hours with digital Richard.
Sure.
They already have a feel for who you are and they've know, like, and trust you. So when you meet them for the first time, they go, oh, Richard, I know you did ultras and I know you do this and I know you do that. It's a very different dynamic.
Yeah, okay.
So that's good marketing when they come in knowing who you are.
Yeah.
Second pillar is the virtual version of, say, Richard. In real life, you've got hundreds, if not thousands, of business contacts in your network. And a lot of the time, it's a contact sport. It's about who you make contact with. And any given day, there's only a certain amount of time to have face-to-face meetings, Zoom calls, or telephone conversations, or even text message exchanges. Say you message or contact with 20 people in a day. That might leave 980 people in your business network that don't hear from you. And so from a marketing standpoint, we need to have a virtual version of you keeping those relationships warm. So whether that's email marketing or sending messages through LinkedIn or sending text messages to people saying, hey, what are you up to? I've got this thing coming up. Would you like to come and join me? Or I'm getting some people together. Have you got your finances sorted? Do you need to refinance this year? Any of those things that are important, you don't have enough time to do that to 980 people every month. But with the right marketing systems, you can.
Wow. I like that idea, like that approach.
Yeah, cool. And then the third pillar is the AI version. So AI, it's not about abdicating responsibility. It's about harnessing the technology that can amplify the magic that you have. And so by training ChatGPT to understand you, your clients, your business, your offer, and your writing style and your thinking style, then you can have this right-hand co-pilot for all of your decisions, all of your content, all of your delivery. And that can just accelerate things so much, like 100 times, 1,000 times faster than doing it all yourself with your own brain power. And I say to clients, like, if we're at the Sunshine Coast now, and we've got a meeting in Sydney, we could walk to Sydney for the meeting.
Sure.
Or we could jump on a plane and fly to Sydney. Because the technology exists, we may as well get there in an hour as opposed to walking or hitchhiking, which might take a day to 5 days. Yeah. There's nothing noble about walking to Sydney
when the flight's available.
And you're there fresher, you're there faster, you get a much better result.
Yeah.
So if you're grinding out all these reports and deliverables and even ideas for your next show or article, when you can have a ChatGPT or a GPT that understands all of your episodes so far, the types of guests you have, the types of questions, even turning show notes, transcripts into show notes. Like say there's so many things that AI can speed up. And so they're the three pillars, the digital, virtual, and AI versions of people that I help put into place so that real life Richard can do the stuff that he loves.
I love that.
Yeah. So that's probably the answer you're looking for before.
Yeah, no. Yeah, thank you. No, I like it. And let's go before we finish. Tell me about the things that you like to do. Tell me about you got 2 young kids.
Yep.
And I said before we off air, I asked you how parenting has changed you.
Yeah, so 2 young kids, a 1-year-old and a 3.5-year-old at the time of recording. Parenting has taught me the value of time. So before I was a father, 20 years kind of, it was great. There was no real marker of time. Now that I've had a kid or 2 kids, or technically 3, but call it 2, each year you see such progression in them, and you are totally conscious and aware of the passing of time. You can't get that year back where Lola was 1. You can't get that year back when she was 2. There's only now and into the future. So to be as present as you can and to spend as much of that time with them as you can now, to me, has been the realization that this little window that we're in, where they're little and they want you and they need you and you can be a part of that, is so special, because you can't get that back when they're 15 or 20. It's a different dynamic. So that's the key lesson for me, and the one that I'm keep trying to come back to, this the value of that, and also through the lens of when I'm older, what would you give to spend an afternoon with your 1-year-old again? If you paid $5,000 or $10,000 or $20,000, if you're 80 years old or 85 years old, you might go, well, I'd spend $20,000 to spend one afternoon with my 1-year-old and 3-year-old. So you need to view that now as like, man, this is like a $50,000 afternoon. Yeah. So yes, I could go to work and make some money or whatever, or I could value this for what it's really worth. $50,000. It's a truly valuable experience that has a finite window and a deadline. So make the most of it now.
That's sage advice, especially for me, because I'm feel like I'm sometimes a part-time lawyer, and especially with a business that's only a year old, you fight in the internals dialogues of the growing list of jobs that need to get done and the emails that keep coming through or the phone calls from clients whilst you're managing AFL training and tennis training and clarinet practice and all the things. So it's not easy.
No, it's not easy, but it's very rewarding. And we can always beat ourselves up, right? Like if we take the afternoon off work, we could, if we chose to, beat ourselves up and say, oh, I should have been working. But then if we do work, then we can choose to beat ourselves up and say, I should have been with the kids. So I think it's just also giving yourself permission as a parent to, whatever you've decided to do was the right decision.
Go all in on that.
Yeah, and I think one thing for me, rather than having FOMO, is having JOMO, the joy of missing out. So I'm here doing this now. This is great. I'm totally comfortable and happy.
Yeah.
All the other things I could be doing right now, surfing, working, being with my kids, I'm here. I'm enjoying this. So I'm at peace with all these other things.
Oh, have you trademarked JOMO?
I read it somewhere.
We have a guy. Okay, we'll have to see. I've got a good trademark attorney, so we can get that all for you done. Oh man, this has been so good, and I appreciate your time, given that there are so many other options out there. But before you go, final 5 quick fire questions, as fast as you can go. What does success mean to you?
The ability to live life on my terms.
What does happiness mean to you?
Being totally content and not wishing I was somewhere else.
What's your morning routine look like?
Currently, it's getting up when the first kid starts crying and hanging out with him for the first 3 hours of the day.
The greatest lesson you've had in your life?
Definitely the kids being born, the lesson of time.
Mm-hmm. And finally, a guest that you would recommend that we should have on the show?
Toby Jenkins, my original business partner.
Adam Franklin, thank you so much, mate.
Thanks, Richard. Cheers.
That was another episode of the Success Times Happiness podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Next time you're on LinkedIn, maybe put up a post all about this episode. It really helps us grow. And a little bit of extra news. We've decided to start a Facebook discussion group labeled Success Times Happiness Podcast Discussion Group for everyone to come in and share their thoughts and ideas with regards to the episode and the show generally. So we'd love you to be part of that page, and feel free to share it with the people in your spheres as well. Until next time, Peace.